King Deja seemed to be the only happy person in the entire kingdom, as he lived his life to the fullest with his new bride. He seemed not bothered about the recent happenings in Omuaran Kingdom. People wondered if their king was the same good man, so they thought, the gods picked as their king. They worried so much for the king as he had changed a lot, and they know sooner than later the gods of the land would visit him with annoyance. They watched the king run his life and that of the kingdom as he so pleased. They knew the gods were not blind to all that was happening, neither were they deaf to the merriment going on in the palace on a daily basis, despite the kingdom's condition at the time. The new queen, Queen Ewa, paraded herself round the kingdom every now and then because she felt she was now the talk of the town and the face of the kingdom. King Deja allowed her do whatever she wanted to do and gave her everything she requested because of the love he had for her. That would actually be the first time a maiden willingly married him without being coerced into marriage with him or being gifted to him. So he was still not over the enthusiasm love brings to anyone who is newly in love. He made her his legal official queen, who would go with him to occasions outside Omuaran and do all that needed to be done by the king's wife. The other wives contested this decision, but their voices didn't go past their bedrooms, as the king was liable to punish them or send them packing if he heard them contesting his decision. The whole kingdom concluded that King Deja was bewitched by the strange woman he got married to and prayed that he sends her back to her people soon. The happiness of marrying a beauty queen began to diminish when a very strange seasonal illness set in for the king. He would always fall sick every 5 market days and get back to his feet 2 weeks later. Whenever he was ill, everyone would think that was the time for him to die, only for him to get back to his feet again days later. There became an urgent need for the gods to be consulted as to why the king was always that ill, even though the king knew he was being punished for the offense he committed together with the chief priest. The gods could have easily forgiven him, just like they did when he raped the innocent girl, if he had confessed publicly and taken responsibilities for his actions, but he didn't. Hence, the wrath of the gods descending upon him for belittling them and thinking of them as blind not to see all he did. King Deja became worried and started thinking that was the end of the road for him. He nonetheless sought to seek the chief priest who had still not redeemed himself from his crimes against the gods. The chief priest answered the king for show-off, but they both knew what the problem was. The chief priest promised the king he would invite a foreign seer, who was the eye of the gods, and send him to the palace to see the king. He was glad to hear this, so he immediately asked the chief priest to go for the invite at once before nightfall. Just as the chief priest had promised, he sent a diviner and seer to the palace the following day, and he consulted his oracles for the problems King Deja was facing. He then delivered the god's message when he said nothing could be done to cure the king's illness, and that the gods were angry at him for maneuvering the last sacrifice that took the lives of so many. He further told him his little secret, the one he had with the offended maiden. But he was the only one who heard this because no one was there with them at the king's chambers. He discharged his visitor, handed him some gift he had his guards prepare for him, and watched him leave. The rumor of the king's strange illness circulated the whole kingdom in no time. Only the gods know who always shared palace information with the villagers. They resumed their gossip stations every morning and would always discuss the probability of the king's new queen having a hand in the king's strange seasonal illness. They started to proffer solutions to this illness, asking the king to divorce that queen or make her pay seriously in his own way. Only if the king heard all they discussed, maybe he would have considered doing any one of them. King Deja became a shadow of himself as he was no longer the happy man he used to be. He decided to confide in his dearest newest queen to tell her about his illness, who was behind it, and how the gods wouldn't stop until he either confessed or died. He called Queen Ewa and explained everything to her, from the genesis of his problems to the part where he was now enjoying the consequences of his actions. He begged her to help him think of any plausible solution to solve his problems, possibly a unique way of appeasing their gods, seeing that their gods were almost the greatest of all other gods in the kingdoms around them. He believed he wouldn't be able to get help from any other god apart from their own gods, so he just wanted to appease them so that they would overlook his shortcomings and forgive him. But the response he got from his queen shocked him. Queen Ewa sighed and told him she would help him find solution to his illness. She explained that she was from the lineage of priestesses. She said her mom was a direct descendant of a priestess, so she would travel home to make sure she found a lasting solution to his illness. On hearing this, King Deja rose to his feet and went inside his room, as he didn't know how exactly he was to react to the shocking information his queen had just shared with him. He got inside his room and started brooding over all the queen had said. Following these, Queen Ewa packed little luggage and left the palace to find her mom and ask for her help, but the whole kingdom thought she had been driven away by the king. They gathered in twos and threes and discussed the successful exit of the queen from their kingdom. They didn't know she only went on a mission. Even the other palace wives were not aware of her mission. Her absence was greatly felt by the king. We all prayed in our hearts that the king wouldn't fall ill again before the return of the queen, because we were so sure he wouldn't make it back to life should the sickness take charge of his body again. After 10 days of Queen Ewa's absence from the palace, she returned with good news for the king. She had pestered her mother and made sure she found a lasting solution to the king's illness. They made several sacrifices to the gods and had Ewa's mother stand as an advocator for the appeasing of the gods. They made a concoction for the king to eat to become very healthy, and it was given to Queen Ewa to make sure he ate it rightly. When she gave it to the king together with explanations of how it was done and instructions of how he would eat it, the king was shocked and at the same time glad he found a savior in his beloved queen. He ate it as instructed and he started getting better hours later. Weeks later, Queen Ewa's mother thought it wise to visit her daughter and her husband, whom she had gone through a lot to prepare a healing concoction for. She didn't inform her daughter of her visit, so Queen Ewa, as well as everyone in the palace, wasn't aware of the visit prior to that time. She had entered Omuaran Kingdom looking strange and funny, as a priestess would. Everybody feared another trouble had risen again, and it was just a matter of time before they got called by the king to the palace. They gave her directions to the palace as she had requested of them. As she got into the compound of the palace, the king also came out of his room into the sitting room with his beloved queen. They were chatting when Ewa's mother walked inside to meet them as directed by the palace maids. Her luggage had been collected from her into the palace, even as the maid with her luggage intended to inform the queen and king of their mother's arrival, because that was who she called herself at the gate. She was happy when she saw her daughter coming to welcome her. Immediately, she was informed of her presence. Ewa expressed her unpreparedness to receive her as an important guest that she was, and she led her straight to the king, her darling husband. Queen Ewa's mother fainted at the sight of the king. At first, King Deja didn't know why his mother-in-law had fainted on getting to where he was seated. But later, when he had a closer look at the woman, he knew he was also doomed too. Just that his reason for thinking that way was different from the reason Ewa's mother had fainted. When she finally came back to consciousness, she explained her ordeal with the king. She said King Deja had once laid with her during one of his trips to her shrine in his quest for power. He was meant to use that as a password to getting affiliated to her source of power as permitted by her gods. But he ran away afterwards thinking that he had it all already. He wasn't aware of the fact that he was supposed to wait back for the perfection of the whole power acquisition process. Strangely, she took in and couldn't abort the pregnancy because that was her chance of ever having a child in her life. She took it that she had found favor from her gods and gave birth to the child, after which she handed her over to her sister since she couldn't take care of the child while working with or for her gods. King Deja's own reason for thinking he was doomed was because he thought he had slept with mother and child and would be needing some sort of cleansing to avert the repercussion, unknown to him that his offense was more grievous than he thought. He never knew he had a daughter with the priestess, let alone know that he would marry her by mistake. Now he started thinking of how his life as a king would just end like that. He thought of how the gods had favored and picked him as an ordinary farmer to become a king of great Omuaran Kingdom. He thought of how he wanted to spend so many more years on the throne to at least give birth to more children. He thought of all his escapades as a king and started crying after realizing it was only a matter of time before the right action was taken by the chiefs to serve him his punishment. He stood up from their midst, picked up his horse tail, and went inside his room for the very last time.